Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today we're reviewing for you Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2 on the Nintendo Switch 2. This review was originally written by the lovely Ollie Reynolds and has been adapted for video by me. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. Now, we have to be brutally honest with you, prior to doing this review, it's been a while since we played either Super Mario Galaxy or indeed its sequel. Yeah, we dabbled a bit in the original in Super Mario 3D All-Stars, but we spent the majority of our time there playing Super Mario Sunshine because, well, it's been a longer time since we played Super Mario Sunshine. As such, in the time since we played the originals, we have been gifted by some genuinely wonderful 3D platformers, the likes of Astro Bot, Crash Bandicoot 4, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and, well, of course, Super Mario Odyssey. So jumping back into Galaxy and Galaxy 2 on Switch 2, that's fun to say, two things became immediately apparent. First, a few minor technical hiccups with the games are perhaps more noticeable now than they were 15 years ago, and second, they still represent 3D Mario at its absolute peak. These games are Nintendo's crowning achievement. They're bursting with creativity to a degree we've not seen elsewhere before or since. Whether you're skating across a frozen lake against a backdrop of stars and a beautiful piano melody, or ground-pounding a blooming meteor into a giant floating Bowser accompanied by the most bombastic orchestral soundtrack imaginable, this pair provides experiences that will stick with you forever. They're simply that impactful. And they've never looked as beautiful as they do here either. Not only do you get to enjoy them up to 4K in docked mode and 1080p in handheld, but many textures have been updated to take advantage of these crisper resolutions. There's nothing here that's comparable to the upgrades seen in, for example, Metroid Prime Remastered, and it's possible that you may not immediately register these changes, but many environmental assets in particular look much more detailed. The UI is also cleaner, with an altered font and slightly smaller icons. The version of Galaxy 1 included in 3D All-Stars did the bare minimum, but Nintendo has finally given both the games the love they deserve, and they look glorious. In addition to the enhanced visuals, these releases also feature several gameplay additions. Co-Star mode makes a welcome return for those who wish to bring a friend on board to help gather star bits or defeat enemies. Player 2 waggles their Joy-Con to move the on-screen cursor, but if you're on Switch 2 like we are, you can use the console's mouse functionality, and it works really bloody well. I mean, realistically, you're probably going to be playing both of these games solo, but you know, it's a nice little extra just to have. Taking inspiration from Odyssey, no doubt, both games now also feature an assist mode to help out newcomers or really anyone who fancies just a bit of a leg up. This automatically doubles available health, and you can even nullify damage by standing still to regain it. Finally, if you happen to fall off a ledge, a bubble will encircle Mario and bring him back safely to land. Galaxy 2 in particular can be fairly tricky, so this may well prove useful to some. For those interested in Galaxy's in-game storybook, the first entry has a brand new chapter. In addition, a completely fresh storybook has been added to Galaxy 2, along with its own and new accompanying music. We're not going to go into any details here, but they're fun, albeit inconsequential additions that we certainly enjoyed reading. And finally, Amiibo are supported, though realistically you'd be hard-pressed to find any scenario in which they actually prove useful. We didn't try every Amiibo under the sun, but every one we did try yielded about 3 star bits, which that's pretty useless. In truth, there are 2 brand new Mario Galaxy Amiibo coming on the 2nd of April 2026, which, yep, that's only 182 days after the game's launch. The Mario and Luma Amiibo provides a health boost, whilst the Rosalina one grants a 1-up mushroom, so that's something. As for the general controls, if you've played 3D All-Stars, you'll know roughly what to expect. As I hope you'd know by now, you can't use a Wii sensor bar on Switch, so gyro is used for collecting the star bits and executing the spin attack, although you can also just tap Y, which, thank God. This is undoubtedly the most sensible solution, but it's still not ideal. You'll find yourself frequently tapping R to recenter the pointer, and if you're using a Pro Controller, twisting and turning it constantly feels just a little bit awkward. It's unsurprising that using the Joy-Con separately is the best way to play in docked mode. In handheld mode, you can use the touchscreen, but gyro aiming for the pointer is also available, which was missing in 3D All-Stars. Waggling the console around to collect star bits can at times feel a bit weird, side, and again, you're going to be resetting the cursor constantly with the R button. The sensitivity does feel about right though, so relatively small movements yield big results. Regardless, don't expect to see many people playing in this manner on public transport. Other than that, Mario feels just as natural to control as he ever did. It's fair to argue that Nintendo pushed the movement fluidity even further with Odyssey, but whether you're hopping around on a series of tiny planets or swinging from flowers atop Yoshi's back, it never feels anything less than exhilarating. Mario Sunshine rightly garnered some criticism for its twitchy, unpredictable movement, but the Galaxy games struck the perfect balance, taking everything that worked so well in Super Mario 64 and polishing it down to a mirror sheen. As for the games themselves, if you've somehow never played either of them before, then it's worth knowing roughly what each entails. The first, you'll be shocked to hear, sees the dastardly Bowser kidnap Peach along with her entire castle, which, okay, that's less common. Still happen in other games, but it's less common. Before blasting Mario off into the far reaches of space, our hero reaches Rosalina and the Lumas and must travel to a host of galaxies to collect enough stars to reach Peach and defeat Bowser. It's standard stuff, but Rosalina's introduction is significant, with the character making multiple appearances in subsequent games and becoming a bit of a fan favorite. In Galaxy 2, the setup remains roughly the same, with newcomer Lubba taking over Rosalina's role as leader of the Lumas. Here, you must travel between galaxies via the Starship Mario, a delightful little fortress fashioned after the plumber's head. Neither game provides a particularly captivating story, although the storybooks do a good job of fleshing things out, but realistically, this does not matter one tiny little bit. The gameplay more than makes up for any narrative shortcomings. Indeed, the real draw of both games is the galaxies themselves. Bowser's levels are also a treat, and they include a fantastic rendition of his classic theme from Mario 64, before ending with spectacular boss encounters that feel genuinely epic. Sending Mario into space sounds ridiculous on paper, but it really was a stroke of genius. The way the games subvert expectations around how a 3D platformer should function is just as marvelous today as it was when the games were first released. Gravity plays tricks at every turn, and there are countless moments where you think you might fall into the abyss, only to flip upside down and land on the underbelly of a teeny tiny planet. It's utterly absurd, but it just works. The only caveat is that sudden changes in camera angles can occasionally mess with your directional inputs. You need to release the left stick entirely and let things recenter before continuing. It's not uncommon in games like this, but it is present, so we need to mention it. The absurdity is what makes these games so special. They go to places and do things that aren't possible anywhere else, even in the mighty Mario Odyssey. Most games are tied to the limitations of their worlds, but going into space gave Nintendo license to break the rules and create scenarios that stretch the absolute limits of creativity. Simply put, there's nothing else quite like it. One moment you're going to be buzzing around and climbing up the wall of honey with the Bee Mario power-up in the Honey Hive Galaxy, and the next you'll be flipping up and down as the gravity shifts in time with funky music in Upside Dizzy Galaxy. We've mentioned just one power-up thus far, but both games include several fantastic transformations that completely turn the gameplay on its head, and they're all wonderful. And if you want to take things further, you can even swap over to Luigi in both games after meeting certain criteria. A lovely little bonus for fans of the Green Man. And now we have to discuss the price. You're looking at $40 or £34 for each game separately, or $70, which is £59 for the bundle. That's a lot of money, there's no question about it. We can understand why some people have got up in arms about it, but it's hard to deny the quality of what you're getting for the value here. Galaxy and Galaxy 2 are two of the greatest platformers of all time that, if you're playing on Switch 2, run at 4K when docked. Even if you're on Switch 1, you're still going to benefit from the whole bunch of upgraded textures that make the game look better than ever. Should they be cheaper simply because they're old? That's a question you can only ask yourself, ultimately. Realistically, we don't begrudge anyone for skipping these releases if you already own them on the Wii. That just makes good sense. What we can say with absolute certainty, however, is that if you do pick them up on Switch, you'll be treated to over 40 hours of borderline perfect video gaming. There's no question about it. Super Mario Galaxy and Galaxy 2 are two of the most sublime games ever created, with gameplay that subverts expectations and scenarios that wouldn't be possible if not for the creative freedom freedom of the cosmos, they represent the Mario series at its absolute best. They look better than ever, boast small yet welcome additions, and expand upon the narrative with new storybook pages. Gyro aiming in truth simply isn't as effective as the Wii pointer, and you'll be recentering the on-screen cursor a lot. Very minor issues with the camera are also a bit more noticeable now than they were 15 years ago, but the fact that Nintendo managed to pull off some utterly ridiculous sequences here without the camera going completely haywire remains a remarkable feat. These games command a high price on Switch to be sure, but you'll be playing them for the rest of your life. Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2, you're getting a 9 out of 10 from us. You've reached the end of the review. That means it's time for Alex's personal thoughts, and I don't want to say I've got some seriously hot takes, but I have some opinions. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the Galaxy games, or rather, I love Super Mario Galaxy 1, 2... we'll get onto that. I don't hate it before anyone jumps to the comments. I just think it's not as good. There are a few things that I wasn't as aware of when I originally played these games on the Wii that have become more apparent now that I've played them on Switch too. Chief among them being Mario's movement being, like, it's kind of gated in some senses. You know how in, like, a Super Mario 3D world, you've only got 8 directions of movement, you don't have that smoothness, you don't have full 360 or arguably infinite directions? That's here, and I don't know how many directions it is. I've not been able to work it out. Some people online say it's 8, some people say it's 16, but either way, sometimes you'll be moving in a direction, and you'll want to do a micro adjustment. And yet Mario doesn't do the micro adjustment. You have to do a larger turn, or like a larger change of direction, and that's kind of annoying. The platforming is built with that in mind, so it's not like I've lost a life due to it or anything like that, but there are certain instances where I just want to move around a planet, and I get, sort of like stuck going in a direction. It's like, no, I don't want to go in this direction. I want to change ever so slightly. I want to go slightly more to the left or slightly more to the right, and you don't have that full degree of movement here, and it's minor, but it came up more often than I would like. As Ollie mentioned as well, the pointer is a bit of a nuisance, but I have found that a lot of the time you don't really need it, and so if you, hold the Pro Controller as I was using it, you point it kind of up, if that makes any sense to Splatoon fans and players of this. Point it up really high, way beyond the screen, press R to recenter it, and then bring it back down to your neutral position. It'll go, as far as the game's concerned, off the screen, and it's just not in the way. You may have noticed it in some of this capture. And then when you do need it, you just press R. I kind of wish there was a way, maybe like pressing and holding R to just kind of hide the cursor, because a vast majority of the game can be played without it, but it's a minor thing. It's a minor thing. One thing I did find with playing Galaxy again, though, after all these years, is just how much fun it is to be able to go around the planets and everything like that. It sounds really silly, and it's kind of mind-bending the first time you play it, but then when you get your kind of like your eye in, it is really, really excellent, and I've not really seen any other game even approach that kind of idea. It does mean, I think, that as a result, if you are familiar, certainly a lot of the earlier levels, as to be expected, feel very, very easy and straightforward. But, that's just the way it goes. I'm sure I'd be saying the same thing if this was a re-release of Mario Odyssey in the year 2035. Galaxy 2, on the other hand, I mean, it's not a big deal by any stretch of the imagination. Arguably, the platforming is even better in 2 than it is in 1, but I really miss Rosalina's Observatory. I mean, it's not a big deal. As I've said, it's not. But the thing about Rosalina's Observatory in Galaxy 1, it provided context to everything, and it felt fleshed out. And I know no one plays Mario for the story or anything like that, unless it's an RPG, but you know what I mean. But the context to what you're doing, it felt like it was a real thing, whereas the beginning of Galaxy 2 is just like a sort of a truncated version of the same intro as Galaxy 1, but just with like a side-scrolling storybook setup, and then, you find a Luma and all this. It just feels like a rushed comparison. Like, sort of somebody was furiously scribbling notes down as they watched the intro to Mario Galaxy on twice speed and didn't get all the detail. And I know, sort of the reasoning behind that. The game was made more quickly, and the first game kind of explains the intro to the second. I'm not going to go into any details, but I'm aware of that. However, I don't think it works. And Starship Mario, man, it's so boring by comparison. Yeah, it's a sphere, but it's just more than anything, you're just going through a menu when you're selecting stages, and you could argue that Rosalina's Observatory is a menu in all but, just appearance, but that appearance counts for something, It's just lacking that kind of magic and sort of like depth to the way that it presents things. Again, it's not a big deal, and I still think Galaxy 2 is a great game, but I can't help but voice these opinions because I find Starship Mario and the menu system to be tedious. But despite saying all that, these are still two of the finest 3D platformers that have ever been made. Yes, Mario may not be quite as snappy and responsive as he is in Odyssey because, funnily enough, it's an older game. And yes, if you played the games before, it's a big price tag in order to revisit it. But if that's how you feel, you don't have to buy it. I still think it should be cheaper as well. I think it should be open to as many people as possible. But, if you've never played these games before, you're getting a fairly good deal. A fairly good deal. It's not exceptional. It should be cheaper, I think. But you know what? Given the climate and everything that's happening right now, it is okay. I would say it is a fair price. No more than that, it is fair. But these games are so good.